Showtime. All right, we're live. Welcome everybody to the Bought or Not podcast and LinkedIn Live mainly. I'm here with my good friend Chaz Horn. He is the sales master coach. In fact, we go way back. He helped us grow our business immensely over the past few years and is one of the foremost experts on growing personal brand on LinkedIn using all the tools, the ups and downs, and everything you can possibly imagine. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to explore how the heck you do that. How are you going to go from A to B to C, and why is that important from the top? But Chaz, thanks for joining us. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, you gave me a lot to live up to, everything in between. So, yeah, it's awesome to be here. We were just recounting kind of how we met through LinkedIn, which had to do with personal brand. So, I look forward to diving into this.
Yeah, and it was really interesting, like the way, like after I reached out to you, and you're like, "Who the heck is this kid?" Right? Like, send me a video, tell me who you really are. And so I sent you a video, and then you're like, "Okay, I'm willing to chat with you now." So you had a tough interview process, everybody. So be prepared if you reach out to Chaz. He's gonna definitely give you an interview process. But in terms of this right now, I want to jump in, and I want to define all the way from the layman who's new to this all the way to the defined sales rep who's trying to promote their business to the entrepreneur, how we go about personal branding in this day and age, and what is it? So why don't we just start with what your conceptualization of it is?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I still kind of struggle sometimes when people say brand and personal brand and the importance and what does it mean. So, I made a definition that's really simple. You are guys ready to take notes on this? You are your personal brand. That's it. Now, as we get into the conversation, we can go in how that ties into your business, why it's important, and all of that. But let me just say this from the outset. You being you will attract the right people into your life, the right prospects into your life, and repel the wrong ones. Be you. Stop thinking about what everyone else thinks, because guess what? People aren't thinking about you. It's what you think about other people thinking about you that really makes the difference. Think about that. Get that out of your mind because that will keep you from creating your personal brand. Be you. That's what differentiates yourself in the marketplace more than anything else.
Awesome. Awesome. I think that a big thing that I learned working with you is understanding that difference. It's like, who are you for real? Like, what is that value proposition in defining that on a personal level, and then defining that as how it fits in your company and how you align that with your own partner. So like going through this in terms of personal branding, why is it important in 2024 more than it has ever been before?
It's such a good question. With AI, and I know this is to bot and not bot, with AI, more and more people are botting ever than ever before. And with bots, it's not personalized. Now, we can get into how to incorporate AI into personal brand and get more into details with Chat GPT in your own voice, which is very powerful. But in 2024, with the myriad of content getting out to the billions of, yes, there's billions of subscribers on LinkedIn now, members on LinkedIn, you being you will attract the right people, and you got to be you with your unique voice. That's what's going to stand out. And one of the biggest things that's going to deter you from creating your personal brand is trying to imitate. You could emulate, if I'm using the right terminology, learn from other people that are up here that have personal brands that we all look up to and follow. But the biggest mistake that you can make is try to imitate them. I see this so often. And here's something key. I will see someone with their content and I'm like, oh, wow, that's kind of cool. And they're pretty transparent and authentic. And I'll schedule a meeting with them. And who they are in real life is contrary to who I see in their content. because they're trying to sound like everyone else or the people that they respect. And so looking at other people's content can really destroy your uniqueness and creativeness and take you outside of who you really are, which is going to prevent you in 2024 from identifying the people identifying you and wanting to talk to you. So you got to be you. That's the key differentiator, yourself. Without that key component, you're going to sound like everyone else. Our business does X. This does. Now we can talk about business brand, which is a little bit different. They should come together in alignment. But you as a sales rep or you as a business owner, if you're creating a personal brand, people are going to be attracted to you first more than the business.
Yeah. So that's an interesting thing. It's like one of the things I found across my social media is and building these things out for a company is people want to have a relationship at the base level of what it is. It's all about relationship building. And what I found personally is the more they get to know you and like you, and they're like, hey, that person sees the world the same as I see the world, right? And then it becomes something where you can interact well, right? Like when we saw one another, we have very similar value structures in the world, and it's easy to get along. And so I think that's one thing you're expressing. So outside of that main tenet of a relationship itself, what are some of the key rules into building the right audience versus the wrong audience on social media?
Right. That's a great question. And I think we can use how we met on LinkedIn as an example so people can have a real story and how it works in the real world. I went through a lot of challenges. Everyone goes through challenges. I'm not saying I'm unique or a victim or anything like this. I went through challenges and I looked at those challenges as things that were holding me back. And there was a time in my life that I went through a very dark period. And it was through that dark period that I realized those challenges weren't there to break me, but to help make me into who God created me to be. And so the biggest thing, it's difficult to grasp this, but hopefully I can communicate this in a way that everyone can understand. Going from darkness to light, I had this unique laugh that came out. That's it. And my kids would say, Dad, that's weird. That's weird. Well, who wants to be weird? Sound weird. But fortunately, I didn't allow my kids to influence me for too long. I'm like, that's part of who I am. So those unique idiosyncrasies that differentiate yourself from everyone else, incorporate that. And Jordan reached out to me. He was talking about this earlier. I don't know if that was before we got on the session or during this, Jordan. He reached out to me in a direct, it was here. He reached out to me in a direct message. I didn't understand it. So I asked him to send me a video and explain, because I thought he was trying to pitch me something. and so he created a video, and a week later he became my client, and I worked with him and Ryan. And he reached out to me because of a post I had about joy. It had nothing to do about business and all these other things. It was about joy and explaining the process I just went through from darkness to light and explaining the joy I had in my life. And I think I was sharing at that point in time, joy doesn't come from getting what you want. It appears when you realize all that you have and get to do. I think that may have been it. I do that in many different forms. So that's what attracted us to one another. And I'm very open about my faith. I used to be reserved about that because I was like, oh man, maybe I'll offend people. It's like, this is who I am. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to be on social media, I want to communicate who I am with boldness and be real with people. So I hope that answers your question, and drill down on another question if you want me to go deeper into that.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting concept. It's more about like walking through the journey, I think, of becoming successful. And that's what most people don't realize, is that before this light and this joy of millions of dollars and mass amounts of employees and XYZ, of drilling through to become that personal brand that's really big and that influencer, there's a lot of darkness along your way. And one of the hardest things to find along the journey is actually joy. Everyone's focused on the outcome, right? And one of the things I think attracts us together was those things. And telling that story, because there's a legitimacy of suffering that goes on for every entrepreneur.
Yes.
And I think that substantiation of that was a big deal for me at the time, right? And now I'm on the other side of the darkness a little bit. So to relate back to this, one of the things I want to drill down on is the biggest medium in the world, as you said, with LinkedIn being 1.3 billion people as of last month, is how do we create a personal brand on LinkedIn, and how do we substantiate ourselves either as entrepreneurs, as really high-end salespeople? Those are the primary ones out there deving this, or just as a general influencer. What are kind of the steps and things that maybe were kind of light bulb moments that helped you along your way into doing what you're doing today?
Yeah. I just made a note so I wouldn't forget. And if you can't read my scribbles, it says journey. This is where so many people miss the mark on creating their personal brand. I still sometimes will miss out because I'm like thinking about, okay, how can I provide value and show them I can solve this problem? And so they see me as the authority, and I'm not documenting the journey. Gary Vee drilled this into, if you follow Gary Vee at all, he drilled this into everyone's head. Document your journey. And so if you want to resonate with other people like I did with Jordan, I was documenting my journey, but you can do it in a much easier way. So it's not, okay, I got to set this up and edit this video or do this. Brad Lee, if you know who he is, he's a sales guru, and he's into a lot of other things now. He had a videographer that was helping him create his personal brand. And it's like Brad would be in these meetings and doing these different things. And then he'd get out of the meeting and the videographer said, okay, we got to shoot for your personal brand. He goes, man, I don't have time. This went on day after day after day. He's paying this guy. And the guy came in his office afterward and he goes, you ready? He's like, he said, bleep, bleep, just start shooting now. And he got on a call and they just documented his conversations and they cut it up into a bunch of different content, and he blew up on social media. So it right now is you could document your journey. Here's the thing that a lot of people don't communicate. They don't communicate their failures, their flaws. And if you want to connect with someone, tell people about something, a mistake that you've made and what you've learned through it. If I look through LinkedIn feeds, through the LinkedIn feed, there's very few people who I see that are authentically talking about a time that they struggled and they got to a place that's like, man, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this. You know how many entrepreneurs, we see the 10 and 20% where it's like, yay, man, I'm amazing. But we don't see the 80% or the iceberg below the surface, the rest of the iceberg. If you document your journey with the ups, the goods, the bads, the celebration, you will attract an audience, and you will attract the right audience. And when you attract the right audience, then people will start to say, oh, hey, I want to learn more about this person. And they'll go to your LinkedIn page. Your LinkedIn profile should be filled out so that you speak to that main need and want of your target audience in such a way as they see you as an authority. We can get more into that because that's really important.
Yeah, it's interesting. And even from my own experience, I know there's a big difference between a follower and a customer. Mm-hmm. And they are so dramatically different. If you guys want to grow followers really fast, be controversial, say stuff like that grows followership, whether it's TikTok or LinkedIn or Facebook, Instagram. You'll blow up because controversial people attract the drama of other people, but they're not your buyers. Buyers are usually well composed, put together. They need poignant advice, but they need the right questions. And so my next kind of lead into that is as we dev things on LinkedIn, one of the overwhelming things that I feel is like, how do we develop content? What's the right balance in between doing, hey, you do audio events. I noticed you do a bunch of those, and I've been part of a couple of them with you, and then LinkedIn live events, and then post content and video content. How do you strike the balance between all of this, Chaz? I know it's a loaded question, like how you build a content calendar, but how do you look at it now that you've had so much experience and success versus when you started?
Yeah, I think that the best, that one of my values is there's nothing like execution to give you clarity. Progress over perfection. So just get out there and start doing things and learn from that. Oh, that didn't do well. That didn't do well. This did well. This did well. And then I'm going to talk about posts that do well. And then I'm going to dive back to your question. So if you start getting content out and you see things aren't, if you're brand new, you might, hey, no one's commenting. Just so you know, 1 to 3% of people out there will engage on your post. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people out there that have these engagement groups where hundreds of people are engaging on their post, or they have these AI bots that are engaging on their post. It's pretty easy to see that from the outside with spending more than 20,000 hours on LinkedIn now. Don't be so caught up with everyone else. Just be caught up with yourself. And when you get a piece of content that does well, take a picture of it, upload it to Claude. I find Claude is a little bit better for this, and say, these 3 posts did really well. What is it about these posts that stands out that I should duplicate and replicate in future content? That's one thing. Now go back to the beginning of your question so I can circle back and go deeper into that.
Well, when you're building your content calendar and based on your experience, the balance between I love the Claude Data AI piece that you're suggesting, but when you're building a content calendar, how do you strike the balance between audio events, LinkedIn lives, general postings, and how do you correlate that to action for your buyer group? Because that's the most important thing. It's one thing to build followership. It's another thing to build authoritative ability to grab customers.
Yeah, and this is where I failed badly. I'll document my journey for everyone. I got caught up in the LinkedIn algorithm. It's like, oh man, my views are up, they're down. It's like, oh man, I'm doing great. I'm like this. And you can get caught up in believing the hype, like with people commenting. It's like, oh wow, they're saying I'm doing good. And so I like what Gary Vee says on this. It's like, I don't listen to the people that are saying you're awesome, and I don't listen to the haters. You just have to look at the stats and going to followers versus actual buyers, prospective clients, qualified leads. I was getting into my personal content, and I would just get on these runs with these personal content, and I would develop more followers. But it wasn't on the back end leading to much. And so I'm like, what's going on here? And so I started tweaking with audio events versus a LinkedIn Live versus a Zoom event. And all of them have purposes. I like LinkedIn Live because it helps you to engage with your target audience. If you have your LinkedIn profile set up, and we can get into this, with the flow of things. If you have your LinkedIn profile set up, you should be not only attracting people to your profile because of your content, you should have a way to get people's information so they're on LinkedIn and off LinkedIn, and then you can market to them directly on text messages and email. When you start getting a list of followers, what I like to do with the audio events is appreciate you following me, appreciate you opting in for my book. I'm going to have a live event and I'm going to talk about this subject. And then I'm going to do a Q&A session and I'll answer any of your questions. So the audio events are really good for engagement, and they're different than the kind of the canned Zoom PowerPoint presentation you're going in that you're going to get the call to action at the end. It helps people see you for who you are. And it's a skill set to be able to take people on stage. You don't know what they're going to say, what they're going to ask, to be able to engage them in a serious conversation and provide value. That I liked a lot, but I started doing that all the time because I enjoyed it. And I missed out on my lives, LinkedIn lives, that's what video, audio events, audio only. Now I would record video with my audio events so I could repurpose those, but we could talk about that later on. The LinkedIn lives has a different audience because they're people that get the notification, or if you had an event, they're watching it, but they can't engage with you except in the chat. So you need to be engaging them throughout the conversation so that they stay. You need to give them value. You need to give them the wow, not so much into the how. This is where I made the mistake. I was just giving away too much, which you don't serve your target audience very well if you give them too much because, oh, yeah, I'm going to start doing this. Well, they're not going to be able to do that correctly. The Zoom events are really good on LinkedIn Live or on the LinkedIn events to have the structured plan with the your story, the hero's journey, and the wow, and then the call to action. That's what I find is best to getting actual qualified prospects into your calendar to onboard new clients. Does that answer your question? Does that make sense?
Yeah, to a large degree, because a lot of people out there, they're doing content and they're trying things and they're not able to, first off, they want to gain traction, because the first thing I think when you get on social media is, I want likes, I want views, I want this. And, from my side, it's all about sales. Like, how do we translate this to sales? How do we have the right people, the right views going? And as you said, most people won't interact with you. It's just not in their nature. They won't like it, comment, anything. They'll just watch. Like, that's the nature of being. But how you build relationship, and this goes back to the sales mentality. Like in LinkedIn, I always feel like it's a balance between inbound and outbound. It's a balance in between feeding the network and then going directly to it.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, you have to, I think it's a double-sided sword. You have to prospect a little bit. You have to bring those people into your web. You have to be commenting on their stuff, liking their stuff, getting those raving fans, those evangelists that we have on a lot of our channels. That takes work. That takes feeding those relationships. So maybe let's dive into those people who helped evangelize you and build you up, sort of like what we're doing now in a way, but the other people who are always showing up to your audio events and always doing this. And even though they're not buyers, they're very powerful advocates for your buyers. Do you know what I'm referring to in that?
Yeah, I believe I do. And this is the great thing about Jordan. And if you need help with getting your CRM, HubSpot, and other things set up correctly, definitely reach out to him. He's all into the data. And this was my weakness because I was not looking at the data below the surface. And so I was spending a lot of time putting content out there. But circling back to 2016, when I started my business, I created a LinkedIn program that was based on 3 messages. It was all outbound. I didn't know anything about content at the time. I pretty much flunked English through high school. So I just learned to write in my own voice, but my outreach was a law of reciprocity message, which I would connect. I would give them something, then they would reciprocate. We'd engage in conversation. And then I would ask, this is before LinkedIn polls came out. I would have a survey question. And I'd say, what's your biggest sales challenge in your business? Lack of sales pipeline, long sales cycle. I can't remember the other question. Guess what? People answered that question. They became qualified leads. Now, that doesn't work here 8 years later, but it worked very well. But to your point about content is all about people knowing you, becoming familiar with you, seeing you as an authority. And to your point, Jordan, the people that engage on your posts many times will not become your clients. It's the people who sit in the background who are looking at your content over and over and over again. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, they're like, reach out to you or me or Jordan, say, man, I've been following your content for such a long time. I really appreciate it. I like to learn more about X. I'm like, really? How long? Oh, a year and a half, 3 months, 6 months. It seems somewhere between 3 to 6 months is the number. The thing I like about, let's talk about demographic and psychographic. And this goes to your outreach in your business development, biz dev. 3% rule. says that people in your demographic search, industry, geographic area, role of the person, size of company, 3% of those people are ready to make buying decisions. That's pretty low, very low. Psychographic, which has the demographic, but now you're dealing with people who they're motivators. And I like to define people in my psychographic is people who are interested in what I'm talking about. So if I schedule a LinkedIn event, let's say I get 150 people register. Well, about 20 to 25% of those will actually show up. But I've created a psychographic prospect list. And if they're in my demographic, they're also in my psychographic. And they're 35% more likely than just in the demographic. And so that is a warm lead list, even if they didn't show up to their event because they said, oh, I want to learn the 5 pillars to grow your business on LinkedIn. And now you have that psychographic prospect list that you can reach out to directly, as opposed to going to Sales Navigator in a demographic search. 3% or more likely, or 3% only around are ready to make buying decision. So I like to do my business development from what I've learned over the years, hundreds of thousands of messages, no hyperbole, to those people that are in my psychographic, not my demographic. And those are the people that are more likely to engage with you. So that's how I create my list of people to reach out to, because I was doing events on a regular. I took a break because I wrote my book and some other things, but then I have a constant stream of warm prospects that I can more easily engage with, as opposed to just reaching out cold. To your hard work and commenting on other people's posts, one of the best ways to create content is to go to other people's posts and don't look at anyone else's comments, because that's going to destroy your thought process, your creativity. Speak with what's on your mind with sincerity and authenticity based on your experience. You do that, and that's where you'll create raving fans. I have one client who didn't, Chaz, I can't, it's going to take me forever to get content out. I have him commenting on 30 to 40 posts a day. It's taking him forever. He needed it though, because he didn't know what to say, how to say it. But guess what? Just within a week, the views on his profile are up 250%. And he's got people reaching out to him to connect with him because of the comments on their post. And so that's that law of reciprocity working in. And if you go, this is the foundation of how I do business. If you go with the intention to serve and not sell, you're going to attract and not repel. Did I cover all the things that you said? Ask me more questions if I didn't cover that. I think
they're really good. And it goes back to a couple sales rules, Chaz. And the old sales rule is you need 7 to 12 touches before someone becomes a buyer, right? Like that's the old sale rule. But I think in the social media realm, we've actually mapped it to about 12 to 30. Yeah. And that's an interesting thing. Keep creating, keep doing. I think that's the main thing for most people. But what you have to do is, and this is the crazy thing about LinkedIn and what I love, as the combination of sales and creator and influencer, LinkedIn Sales Navigator allows you to follow everybody that you're looking to prospect. And you have 100, 200 people you're keeping up with. Let's say that's your very targeted account-based marketing approach that you're going for. You can you can comment, you can do that. And people in that addressable market your customers could see that, right? Some other people could grab onto it. The most business that we get isn't directly people reaching to us. It's a referral from someone. It's someone who's been in my network a while and then reached out and said, hey, you should meet X. I just did that for someone the other day here. They both own these big companies, very similar. I didn't even know that they had the exact same cultural background from the exact same part of the world. I connected the two of them, and now they have a great relationship going, which is fantastic. But it's just because I referred to a refer, right? Because he had great content going up all the time. It kept him top of mind. So when I saw an opportunity for him and his business, I connected the two people. And that's the one thing is timing's everything. And I learned this thing in sales. And it was called the leaky roof theory. And the reason is I had this guy, multi-millionaire worth like $100 million. He said, you know, the secret to sales, know which competitors of yours are really bad, show up to where they've serviced. And he used to say, here's my card. And the guy's like, I just got my roof done. And the guy would be like, exactly. Call me when it leaks. And it was about
that's awesome.
Right? He owned a big roofing company. He's like, call it when it leaks, slide the card across. But why? Because it was timing. And he knew that the timing is, I need a solution, as you said, intent of buyer to make a buying decision. But you have to be there when that exists. So how do you be there other than mass broadcast? Right. And that's why outbound emails worked for so long, because that you can hit that 3% of buyer out there by outbound email. It's possible. But with social media, it allows us to stay front and center. So when that occurs, and it could be 3 months, 6 months, 3 years. I just had a deal close that was 2.5 years in the making. My gosh, right? Like that's wild. But it's all because the leaky roof theory. And I feel like that's so much stronger now than ever. I don't know if you've heard it presented that way. But
no, that's good. Let me add something to that if I can. So I still have my clients reaching people in their demographic, but when you reach people in the demographic, I use what I call the unity principle. And if you know Dr. Robert Cialdini, he wrote the book Influence, and after Influence, he said, oh, wait, these 6 things are good. And I think they had like scarcity, law of reciprocity, and I can forget the other 4. He said the unity principle is more powerful than all of them. And that's connecting with people based on similar backgrounds. For instance, one of the best things to consider is college. If you went to college and you could connect with someone like Ohio State, let's say, I'm a big Buckeye fan. I grew up in Ohio. I could just reach out to someone from Ohio State that is in my demographic, and I can say OH, and they'll respond back IO, and I'll have a new connection. I've gone through all the stuff as far as they looking to pitch me or doing this, because we have that common theme from our background in college years, kind of those formidable years, growing up. You have that, and there's like a cult-like following in Ohio State. A lot of colleges are like that. So I will have my clients reach out based on the unity principle, and then you can get into conversations, and they're already in your demographic, and then you can cultivate that, get into conversations and do that. So yes, you should continue to fill your demographic, but when you have content out and you're messaging people, guess what? The LinkedIn algorithm, they're more likely to see your content. So it's not just reaching out cold and doing a DM and they don't know you in any other way. They'll look at your profile, and we should talk about that in a little bit, and see, oh, this is what they do. This is something I may be interested in. So yeah, definitely continue to fill the pipeline, the top of the funnel with the demographic, but there should be steps in your funnel. So it goes from just demographic into psychographic. And there is a way within business development that you could connect people within ACA, which is acknowledge, compliment, ask. And then you could do what I call, it's a pattern interrupt with an assumptive statement with a pattern interrupt. That is the pattern interrupt with an open-ended question. So I could reach out to someone and say, hey, I see you work for ABC company in XYZ. You seem like one busy person. That's the assumptive statement. Where do you focus most of your time on? Just by using that assumptive statement with an open-ended question, people are 50% more likely to engage in conversation with you.
That's really interesting, because that's a good pattern interrupt. And a lot of people are lacking on their messaging on LinkedIn. They don't do the reach out. Like here's my biggest thing in sales that bugs me. If you don't have a premium subscription on LinkedIn, you're crazy. That's number one, because you can't see who's seeing you. But people don't go through at least every couple of days and see who's looking at them. That is the best buyer intent in the world.
Yes.
Like it's wild that they don't do it, and then reaching out to those messages, right? There's just a pattern there. Do you have any advice there, Chaz?
Yeah, I do. So This was 20,000 hours in the making. You may be unimpressed with what I tell you, or maybe you'll say you're a little bit slow, Chaz. I would look at people who would follow me. I would look at people who would view my profile, and just say that if they're in your demographic, it's a good point. Chance they're in your psychographic too, because they got to your profile for a reason. Is it a connection request? Is it your content? Is it both? So I'm like, how can I reach out to these people that doesn't sound cheesy and whatnot? So this is what I do. Similar for both followers and people who view my profile. Jordan, thanks for viewing my profile. I hope to connect. He connects. Many people view my profile after seeing my content. What brought you my way? Those 3 simple lines. Oh yeah, I saw your content about this. I saw your content about that. Booyah. The same happens when people send me a connection request. And most people who are interested in working with me don't send me a connection message. They just send me a connection with no connection message. I use a similar message. Thanks for reaching out. Great to connect, because they connect. Many people reach out to connect after they see my content. What brought you my way? And then followers, the same type of thing. Thanks for following me. I hope to connect. They connect, and then the same messaging. That simple message gets to the heart of the matter without being cheesy. It's being direct. It's being assertive, but it's not being aggressive. That saved me. I can't tell you how much time and try to go through the process and look at their profile. Now I know. Oh, I saw your content about this and I hope to connect. Now the conversation is going. And I gave if you notice, there's an assumptive statement in there too. Most people view my profile or connect with me after seeing my content. So those 3 lines in those messages with connection requests, viewing your profile, or followers, you get to the heart of the matter of conversations, and you can take it deeper, schedule a meeting, find a collaboration partner, which is very, very powerful too on LinkedIn. Collaboration. Jordan alluded to it earlier with how that 2.5 years in the making client.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly it. And a lot of it, like, again, like I saw that client check out my profile. Okay,
Mhm.
they're looking. There was a buyer intent. I check it every day. I'm religious in the morning at looking at who's looking at my profile and reaching to them. Like, I see you, right? Like, that's the important thing. And when I reach out, I'd be like, hey, I saw you checking it out. How are you doing? Or, what's new in your business? I make that ask to make it easy for them to have that conversation, because a lot of people, regardless of what people tell you, it's like public speaking. It's the scariest thing in the world to most people, and they hate reaching out. They're not natural salespeople. And so doing that and helping them promote that conversation is really easy. And even if they drop by your profile, like, hey, thanks for connecting, you can say when you have your connection message, what sparked you to drop by my profile? I would love to open the conversation. It's that initialization that really helps. And we're talking about moving people from followers into buyers. And I think that conversation is still 2-way on LinkedIn for most of us. Like, there are those huge creators that have courses and things they sell and different things they can drop into. Now, you can move along that line, but it's still that outbound sales game is the hook that exists in LinkedIn that most people, they don't go far enough. They don't do it consistently enough. And that's what misses. So I want to drill down to something else, Jazz. You have, and this will really help people conceptualize, like, you're one of the first guys out there who is talking about AI and how to use these different things. And you talked about Claude today, taking your best posts, throw them in Claude AI, saying, hey, what can we compare and contrast to pull good information to do? And you've actually wrote a book, have you not?
I have. The
All right.
B2B Blueprint to Predictable Sales, subtitle, 7 Fatal Leadership Mistakes That Prevent Growth.
Awesome. So what we'll do for everybody is, after this, we'll throw that link below. Chaz will throw it up, and you'll be able to
Appreciate
grab
that.
a
Thank
copy
you.
of that for sure. But walk us through. I know that you built that to allow people to convert in the B2B space from social media over to sales. Do you want to go over a couple of the tenets that you have there? Because I think it's really strong for this series. Because a lot of people are watching here. How do I convert more business? That's the end goal. The state in mind is, how do I create the following? How do I do this? But the end goal is, how do I create more revenue for my company?
Right. So you have 4 things. You have identify, attract, convert, and onboard. And so and I find people have usually the most difficulty is everyone, I want leads. I want leads. They want the top of the funnel, but they have a leaky bucket, like a leaky roof, like you're alluding to. And that's the importance of onboarding. If you don't onboard people properly, you're missing out on the long-term value of your client, upsells, cross sells, and referrals. And this is something Alex Hormozi talks about, and Layla, the importance of onboarding them in such a way that they get true value, so they want to stay with you and refer other people to you. Most people want that crack, which is that lead, which is identify, attract. And so that's the leads at the top of the funnel. So within my book, I have tabs, which is TTABS. And yes, my tabs has 2 T's. I do know how to spell, barely. I found that if companies aren't identifying, attracting, converting, and onboarding, it's going to be because of one or more of these 5 things. And the first T is tactic. This is about what you do. It could be a DM. It could be a live event. It could be posting content. These are all tactics. The second T is the technique, and that's how you execute on the tactic. I'll give you a real good example about how all these, let me go through this. A is attitude. It's not about having an attitude of tenacity in sales anymore. It's better to have an attitude and perspective of intention to serve as opposed to intention to sell. That will change what you say. It will change how you say it. And if you truly go with the intention to serve, how many of you out there have had a salesperson that truly seemed to care about you? Maya Angelou, she said, people won't remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. That intention to serve will radically change all of your conversations in DMs, content, and whatnot. B is the activity. That's how many of the tactics you do. If you have the right tactic with the right technique and attitude, you should have a certain amount of meetings and a certain amount of clients. S, this is where a lot of sales organizations miss the mark. Strategy. That's marketing. You have to know and understand that main need and want of your target audience. If you don't, how can you create a positioning? How can you frame the conversations? How can you market to them so that they know what you do, that they're interested in you, and they see you? Because marketing is all about, yes, being familiar, but also seeing you as someone who could potentially solve their problem. So if people aren't scheduling meetings, they're not identifying, attracting, converting, and onboarding, it's going to be one or more of these 5 things. That's something that I cover in the book. Now, you started the conversation with AI, but then you flipped over to the tenements in the book. So if you want me to flip over to AI or have additional questions on that, please ask.
Yeah. So one of the things I bring it up because everything that we do with artificial intelligence across the board is rooted in fundamental sales. And personal branding, the same thing. It's consistent messaging to the right ICP, and you bring it to that next level by backing it up with sales. And I think a lot of people on social media want to skip steps. And by skip steps, they want to build this massive brand all of a sudden that comes out of nowhere with their content, and they're selling stuff. Okay,
right.
There's companies called unicorns as well, but they call them unicorns because they're very rare. And there's usually, for most of us as regular human beings, there's a gap, a bridge that you have to cross, right? And how do we substantiate that? I believe is what you're talking about, the fundamentals of what you're expressing in that book. What are those fundamentals and where are people's minds at? And I always tell people, like in sales, and I want you to discuss this a little bit on your thoughts on it. I view when someone thinks they have a need in the market, like the top of the iceberg, and consider that what we see on the outside of the body, but the mind is below, it's underneath the surface, and the real needs are different. The real things that are causing that to bubble up is like, I got to handle that, and that's going to fix all this. but we can't get into that conversation unless we get in a conversation and we start peeling back the onion. So how do you get in front is that systemic thing you have to handle. That's how you're going to get the meeting, right? And I think a lot of people want to skip it and they want to go 4 levels deeper on the way of doing it. But as you said, sometimes we can get too complex. And we get too complex because we're going, I would say, to the underneath the water of the iceberg, and we're not on top. And that's when you say, like, maybe when you cover things and you've dialed it back a lot lately, I've seen it, it's just handling this one thing. Like, how do we handle this one thing really, really, really well, like you do in your training sessions and coaching sessions? And so with that shift, like, and I've seen it in your socials and a lot of people's out there, is keeping it a lot simpler, because we always wanted to, like, hey, let's hear all this genius, let's unload it. But people go, I can't hear it, right? I can only hear this one thing. It's just like the old pastors used to say, you can never hear a good sermon over a grumbling stomach.
Yeah.
So that's why we feed them before we take them to church, right? So that's the idea of it back in the day. So what are your ideas around that and serving that top of that iceberg to get them into those sales conversations?
Yeah, this is where I made a big mistake for a long time. I was trying to give them so much information that I just missed out. And I'd see other people's content, and here, don't compare yourself to other people because it will suck the joy out of your life. But I think it's good to learn. If someone's up here, it's like, okay, they're doing something right. What is it? Not to imitate, but to emulate and whatnot. Justin Welsh does a beautiful job of this. He's created like a $3 million a year business by being a solopreneur, by selling these $97 courses for content or whatnot. But it's very simple. I am now, like this week, I'm going through tabs, but I used to get all of them because I wanted to give people real value. But if you try to get too much value, it's just all over the place, and people are not going to read it because their attention spans are very short. They usually only read the first top 3 lines of your post. And so you need to make sure to get their attention on that. And then it can't be just like my son will say, like clickbait. You click on something and it's like, has nothing to do with what the hook is, the first subject or the first line of the post. So now I'm just taking one of those letters each day and expanding on that. Like yesterday it was brought to you by the letter S. Anybody who follows Sesame Street, which was strategy. And so I went into detail. It's like, stop attracting. I forget what my hook was, but stop attracting the wrong people. Start engaging the right audience. It was much more powerful than that. And then I went into, you're not going to be able to do that if you don't understand your target audience's main need, their main want, and how that problem is keeping them up at night. And so I walked through the 7 things that they need to do in order to create a strategy, and identify who you work with, what's your outcome, what's the hell they're in right now, and how is that affecting them? It's not like, they're not able to schedule meetings. Well, they're not able to schedule meetings. And if they don't schedule meetings, they don't have revenue. They're going to have to get rid of people on their team. They're not going to have a business. It's keeping them up at night. And you can keep going down and down and down. Their spouse is looking at them like, you're a loser. I mean, all these things below the surface, but you can't start down here like you're a loser. And you got to start here within the way conversations go. But I broke that down. It did pretty well. And people are like, oh, wow, that's good. So much of my time, Jordan, I just did it wrong. Even though my content was doing okay, I was focusing on too much. So when you're creating your personal brand in content, focus on like one thing, but focus on one thing in your post and be crystal clear, get value, but you don't want to get too much into the weeds. And it's not something you could just say, oh, it's execution will bring clarity, and you keep looking at it and improving and keep getting better. But for so many years, I was just trying to get all this stuff out there to give all this value. and it repelled my right people and attracted the wrong people. It should be the other way around.
So, it's really interesting, and I want to boil down one part I heard from you is go slowly and go surely with it. But I have an analogy. One of my great friends, he went from sleeping in the back of a truck to worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So when I first met him, he's sleeping in the back of his SUV, and now he's worth hundreds of millions of
That's
dollars. So
awesome.
he has a trajectory over the last 20 years, which is phenomenal. And I won't give his name here because I'm just going to allude to the lesson. And
Right.
the lesson was, he said, Jordan, read a chapter a day, no more, no less. And he said, because in a year, you're going to have read 365 chapters that you're actually ready to receive.
Mm-hmm.
And when I boil it down in my mind, and this came up now, is maybe, content creators should only be trying to give a chapter. They have their plan out there. They have their 20 chapters of their book or whatever it is, but give a chapter and run people along the line, because I find too often we want to expose, here's the whole methodology, here's this, because we think people are addicted to dopamine. But the problem with dopamine is they're only ready to receive the first part of it because their dopamine has burned them right out. So we have to spoon feed them once a day, like good medicine. You don't take all your pills the first day the doctor gives them to you. You take them over weeks and weeks and weeks. So it's really interesting what's coming from this conversation. For me, is like the epiphany is like, maybe we chapter things out a lot more as we stage people through it. Because as you said, are they ready to receive it? And that's what he said. Like, I said, even in my life, I wasn't ready to receive everything that I have now. It went chapter by chapter by chapter. And like, that's how he moved through his life. Right. And so that's really, really cool. But anyways, within that, I want to go to the other part of the conversation that you have. It's like, how do we create genuine content that connects, but then has people reach out? And so I think the last question I had for you of the day, other than how do people get to know Chas Morton, and spend time with you, was how do you use your personal brand to ultimately close sales, right? Like, how do we move? If you could give that main light bulb that you had, other than all the transitions we talked about of going from the ethereal to the real, what kind of stands out to you?
Yeah. So, it's like you hear these people out interviewing people that are in a Ferrari. So what's the secret to being rich? And, people say it's hard work or something, so definitely hard work is part of it. But with your personal brand, it's about people becoming familiar with you. But it's not just familiar with you, because then you could just have followers. It's about becoming familiar with you and associating you with being able to solve their problem. So I'm working with Chat GPT to help my clients, and I almost have it ready. I have a friend who did this, and in your own voice, 4.0 on Chat GPT, you can have your own voice. You have to program it and whatnot. It's pretty powerful. As I'm going through this, I'm like, okay, these TABS, they're resonating with my clients. But now, getting back to what I was talking about, I'm focusing on one thing. Now I can grab people's attention and hold their attention, the right people, as opposed to regurgitating everything at once. Now I have someone who's interested, a call to action within a post. So to identify you're going through, you should be creating your founding documents. I have a whole strategy to go through that, so that you're speaking to them with their main need and want. And within tabs, this is where I speak to them. And I'm focusing on one area, so they're not only familiar with me as a personality, but as value and as a person who could potentially solve their problem. They're starting to see me as an authority. So I'm focusing on that, and I'm doing call to actions. Not every time, kind of like Gary, I hate to use Gary Vee multiple times here, but he has the book. It's like jab, 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 right hook. The right hook is the call to action. So you're providing value. You're getting out there on a regular basis. They're seeing you. You're doing, and I just take people to my LinkedIn page, because that's where my book is. And back to what Jordan said, you should be looking at people that are viewing your LinkedIn page, who are following you. So by putting out content, you're creating that psychographic prospect list because you're getting followers, you're getting people view your profile, you're getting people that are reaching out to you. Now it's like, okay, I just gave you kind of the three things and how to get people from a follower or connection or viewing my profile into a conversation. Then it's just getting them into a conversation. I usually send someone a personal video message, like I did with you, and said, oh, so you're looking to solve X, Y, and Z? How about if we meet for 20 minutes and I'd be happy to chat with you about this. If I can help, I'll be happy to have an additional conversation with you. This will only be 20 minutes. If I can't help, I'll refer you to someone else. I'm just myself. I'm not trying to coerce them or convince them. And there's always a booking link that they can schedule right from that video. So that's what I find. That video in between the content and conversation is something different that a lot of people still, even with video messages, they're not incorporating with their LinkedIn messages. So those people, and if they don't watch the video message, I'm getting into like some more tactical things. Within a couple of days, I'll reach out and say, I've had a problem with people not being able to view my video messages before. 100% accurate. If you've ever had a video SaaS product, I have. Please let me know if you had a problem viewing the video message I sent you above. Well, guess what? 25 to 30% will then watch the video, and a certain percentage of those will schedule the meetings. So these are some tactical things with strategies and techniques to use, but it starts with knowing that main need and want, speaking to it in such a way so they see you as an authority, they're familiar with you, so they go from content to profile. Your profile should be set up as a landing page so that you're capturing not only they visiting, but they're opting in for your newsletter or for my book, in my case. Now you're getting people off LinkedIn, they're qualified leads, and then you can market to them directly. And then you have call to actions within your email or your DMs. But that's the flow of the process. Content, whether live events, profile, they opt in or they just view your profile. You can see them, get them involved in a conversation, get them into a meeting. I have a 2-call process, 20 minutes, 60 minutes. I onboard them as a client. And these are typically for people who sell high ticket offers. That's the whole process flow. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciate the knowledge. Like some of these big things, like people don't realize when you boil it down to it, people want relationship. And when you reach out, like a lot of the best calls I book, well, let's just have a call and see if, get to know each other. Like who knows if we're going to change the world, but I know I'm going to connect some dots for that person. And one thing I noticed about you is you're kind of that go-giver mentality. You're always like, how can I help? How can I help? That service mentality that exists. And I think that that's where sales is going, because how are we going to, with everyone having really good similar offers that are out there, what differentiates is going to be the relationship. The psychology of the buying decision is going to be huge. Robots will not replace salespeople. I'm sorry to tell everybody, because we relate to the human. Like we can buy whatever product, but we're not going to sit there and be drones and listen to our private AI and just, no, we're still going to go have relationships and do things. So I think that's a very important piece of this. Now, I want to get everyone to get a hold of you. If you don't follow Chaz on LinkedIn, go follow him because he's got great content. Is there some other mediums that they could reach out to you, Chaz?
Yeah, well, go to my profile on LinkedIn. You could opt in for my book, or Jordan's going to put a link below. That's good. My YouTube channel, I'm starting to build out a little bit. More and more people, I realize, because I started asking the question and getting the data, that they're coming to my LinkedIn profile because of my YouTube content. So it's important to ask the right questions. If people are coming to you, you want to know how they got there and then ask additional questions. So reach out to me on LinkedIn, grab a copy of the book. And by the way, in the book, it's not just reading about the B2B blueprint to grow sales. There's actual video training in there. And I actually have the video training on how to create your founding documents for your sales and marketing mission statement. That's included. And there's other video training in there as well. So yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's probably the best place to communicate with me. Jordan, has been good. Can I add one quick thing? Because you just brought something up that made me think of something.
Yeah, of course.
The go-giver. So I didn't used to be the go-giver type. I used to be so fixated on my system and process because it was proven. I missed out on opportunities. and this is one of the values that I developed over the last couple of years, and this is why you know me, because I've developed over the last couple of years, is many opportunities are disguised as inconveniences. Over the last couple of years, when I reach out to someone, I truly say, if they don't become my client, there's a way I could collaborate with them. Jordan, you and I have collaborated. I've promoted you through my newsletter. You promoted me. So we're collaborating and we're helping one another. You never know that one person who could be a collaboration partner, who could connect you with someone else, or maybe they have an email list, the same target market, but you have same different offers, where you could promote them, they could promote you. I had one entrepreneur in 2023. She was really, I mean, she has 1 million followers on LinkedIn. She had a program. It was solely LinkedIn content. And I'm good on LinkedIn content, but she was stronger. She was weak on sales. I was stronger on sales. We came together, created a co-offer, and it brought us each 100K, over 100K in 2023 by collaborating with our strengths and weaknesses. And it was simple. We didn't have to go outside of our processes. We just served them how we did. But I would just add this, and she would add this for my clients. I would add this for her clients. And we served them at a higher level. There's so many ways to collaborate with other people. I actually have a document. If you reach out to me, I'll share it with you. It's 8 ways to collaborate with people on LinkedIn that will help them and it will help you in ways that you never think or imagine. Again, those opportunities are often disguised as inconveniences.
You know, one of the greatest ways I built wealth actually in a relationship is, you know, if I can connect a dot for someone and I know it will help them, I connect it. I'd be like,
Yes.
you know, I know someone who can really, like, you guys together will be fire. I'm going to connect you. This is why. And then they see it and they're like, wow, that really changed things for me. And that comes back circle. It might be a year, it might be 2, but you built really great rapport by connecting those dots without a handout, being like, I'll take this from the deal, I'll do this, right? And you'll find that the wealthier people you get around, they don't forget you and they come back around to you and good things happen. So that's how the basis of the world gets. I think that's the reciprocity rule that you mentioned within it. Yeah, it's really huge. So I want to encourage everyone, go get Chaz's book. Dive into that, go over the rules we talked about from transitioning from the social media, the follow structure, actually into the customer, because that's the big fight for all of us in the personal brand situation and building your authority and going through that. And he said, be real, be you, be your voice, because that's what's going to attract people. And the authenticity is very important. So outside of all those rules, Chaz, great friend of mine. I really appreciate you. Everyone, you should reach out to him. Spend time. He's helped us make millions. He can do the same for you. So reach out. Best coach you can ever find.
Thank you, Jordan. I appreciate it, man.
All right, everybody.